Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast, where it's our goal to help you become the best financial advisor possible and drive the positive evolution of financial advice. Hub24 is an ASX-listed company with over $15 billion funds under management and one of the fastest growing platforms in the market. Neither a bank nor part of a bank, Hub24 focuses entirely on connecting advisors to a broad range of investment solutions for their clients. Discover why other advisors think Hub24 are the best in the market and access the benefits of choice and efficiency for you and your clients with their market-leading managed portfolio solution. To find out more, visit hub24.com.au. G'day, how's it going? What do you know? Strike a light, Clayton here with Roger from Blue Path, who I stumbled upon via reputation first.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was in the middle of the XY party tour, the Christmas tour, right? So there we were. I was in Geelong and I'm chatting with a bunch of advisors. And some of them mentioned you because you are, at least according to them, right?
Yeah.
Knew quite a lot about sort of fiduciary and FASIA and a lot of this sort of more technical stuff, which I'm a closet nerd for, right? So I love all this sort of deep and get into the weeds. And they were saying, it was super interesting. So we tracked you down and I saw you were getting selfies with, Stephen
Glenfield.
Yeah, Glenfield at the
man at the FPA
at the
Congress.
FPA. I saw you getting selfies. I saw you wrote the articles. And I thought I've got to get this man on to chat. So thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So if we let's start really high level. What does fiduciary mean? And am I even pronouncing it right? What does it mean?
Fiduciary.
Fiduciary.
Yeah, fiduciary.
And what does it mean?
I think that word puts off a lot of people. You just look at that and it just doesn't give anything away about what it means, right?
Yeah.
So that's just the term that was used historically to describe the relationship where someone's in a position of trust over someone else who's vulnerable. The classic was the trustee. So, we all know what trustees are. They are fiduciaries for the beneficiaries of the trust.
Right.
And other fiduciaries are lawyers, solicitors are fiduciaries, and also attorneys, of course, enduring powers of attorney are also fiduciaries.
Yeah, okay. And general power of attorney, I guess, as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So it's essentially, it's a position of power that requires a level of trust.
Yeah.
Would you say a dentist is a fiduciary?
No.
Okay. So here's a story. I went to the dentist and they tell me there's something wrong with my tooth. There's no pain. There's no problem. And then they sort of hack around with it and it creates a problem, right? So now I've got to go get a root canal, right? Because as far as I was concerned, there was no problem, but now there's a problem. Isn't that a position of responsibility where I have to trust them?
It's a position of responsibility and they owe you a duty of care.
Yes.
And they're a professional, so it's a high standard of being a dentist that they owe you. So that's a professional duty of care. So they can be sued in negligence.
Sure. Not that they will. They're actually fantastic.
And they also have a certain degree of confidentiality over your records, right? They can't tell people your dental records, give those away to anybody.
Yes.
But they're not actually a fiduciary in the sense that they have to avoid a conflict of interest.
But aren't they, due to capitalism, where if they source a problem, right, then they're paid extra money? Right.
So they created a problem?
Well, not so much if they created a problem because there probably was a problem there. But as in, isn't there sort of, and I'm just using this as a
it's a good
example.
one. It's a good one, yeah.
So
they're fiduciary like doctors and dentists, but actually in Australia, doctors and dentists have been held not to be fiduciaries as such.
Okay, interesting.
So they don't have to avoid conflicts of interest.
Right, which blows my mind because, I mean, if they look into someone's mouth and they go, actually, this person needs a filling, for example,
Yeah.
they get paid to diagnose that problem. So
Yeah.
they're the one creating the business and then they're the ones fulfilling the need.
Yeah.
So
there's an element of that in a fiduciary, But if you think about it, that goes for a lot of businesses.
Absolutely.
Builders,
a mechanic,
builders,
for example.
Mechanics, you're trusting them.
Yeah.
So there's amount of trust there for a tradie.
Yeah.
In a lot of things, there's amount of trust.
And so that's definitely at the heart of my point. So how does fiduciary differ from all of those other ones?
It differs from all of those ones because it's a higher level of selflessness required.
It's a higher level.
Yeah. So you may not be in a conflict of interest and you may not exploit with fees.
Right.
Yeah. So like a mechanic or a builder, they can agree a fee with you and you're liable to pay it.
But they're always
contractually.
They're going to find an extra oil leak and, the belt needs replacing or whatever, right?
Yeah. So maybe one day they'll be regulated to that. They are regulated now, right, to a high degree. But if you agree a price with a builder,
yes.
If there's no fraud, there's no misrepresenting on his part. There's all sorts of other legal protections in there for you when you're dealing with a mechanic or a builder.
Right. Okay. That's
and also
fair.
A dentist and also a doctor because they've got professional obligations to you. So doctors and dentists have got a higher level of professional obligations to you than a builder or a mechanic, right?
Yes. But then I guess what you're saying is with this fiduciary responsibility, it's even higher than doctors and dentists.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. So where does it come from? What's the history of it?
Because what's at stake, right? Let's look at a lawyer. If you go to a lawyer, that this is very important to you. It could be representing you in a criminal matter. So they want to know that you are out to bat for them only, completely devoted to their interests, and you haven't got any other things going on which is going to compromise putting all of your skill, all of your devotion to that client. That's what you expect from a lawyer, right?
Yes.
Same with any kind of lawyer. So, and it's so sensitive when you're in a combative, say, commercial situation. It's so sensitive. The stakes are so high that you want the assurance that they haven't got any kind of thing going on, which means they're actually not giving you their all, and there's some suspicion that they're going easy on the other side because of some connection they've got with the other side.
Right.
So it's been held to be a very high level of selflessness, and also, so most people don't know the law, supposedly, right? We don't know the law. So we're in the hands of someone who could tell us things, just lie to us if ultimately we probably have no way of knowing. And I know that's analogous to a doctor, but the the combative adversarial side that's present in the legal fiduciary relationship on the other side, that's the higher stakes.
Well, it's really interesting. If you go back to the East Dutch India Company, and we say, okay, so that's the birth of the corporate entity. You might be able to tell me differently. That's as far as I'm aware. But does the fiduciary responsibility go back to a similar time in history?
Precedes that. Precedes the company, the limited company. But the limited company, of course, the directors are also fiduciaries. They're fiduciaries
to the shareholders.
Actually, to the company.
Huh.
And then, but not directly to the shareholders. But you say they've got a duty to the shareholders, but actually it's to the company, as it happens.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and so directors shouldn't be in a conflict of interest either. They get reasonable fees, but also they have to put all their services, in service to the company. So the shareholders know these directors are going into bat for us.
That's a really interesting comment, because conflicts of interest, if anyone does anything in life and they they bring with them a list of projects that they're a part of and things like that, typically there are conflicts, but then that's when sort of that declaration of conflicts on a register and making that public to the board and to the shareholders, that it becomes important at that stage, right?
Yeah. So there's conflicts and there's conflicts, right? So that's actually behind a lot of the confusion with this term. So there's potential conflicts of interest, things like that aren't recognised in law as a conflict of interest. So your relatives. So you're in a meeting and you recognise one of the people on the other side of someone that you went to school with. Does that mean there's a conflict of interest? No, So we're all connected.
Yes.
But the law has worked out, well, what is a conflict of interest? What do we actually need to protect versus what is just that's just theoretical rather than an actual conflict of interest.
Right. And then if we tie that back to financial planning, financial planners are fiduciary and responsible to the needs of our clients.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, well, so all of the jobs and these functions are all different, right? So lawyers are going to be different to trustees and so on. So with your financial advisors, you've got, well, you can just go through a simple scenario, right? You go to a financial advisor and you're telling them stuff. So you want to know that they are going to keep that confidential. Yes. Yep. And so on. And then when you start telling them information about your wealth, you're really trusting them. And it could be that they could do something with that, right? So you know that it's not just a building job. It's not just giving someone your car. You're really laying up. You could have considerable assets, and that could be useful to them. They could be able to make something out of that information. So there's that level of trust. And then there's you've got all the financial markets out there. There's this highly technical area, and I don't know much about it, but I'm putting something big at stake, putting it in your hands. And the recommendations I'm expecting from you are that it's completely in my best interest that you're serving me. So you're not going to put me into a product just because you're getting a fee from that I don't know about. And that's your real motivation. So that's the conflict of interest. So that's your conflict of remuneration.
Okay. So
most of your financial advisor conflicts are to do with remuneration.
Yeah, that makes sense because, I understand what you mean when you say if you go and start telling everyone what the private details of your clients, right? That's a pretty obvious one, right? Sure. But then how, if financial advisors are tied to this fiduciary duty, how did Timber Corp ever exist? How did these products that came through, how were they ever legal then from a product manufacturer point of view?
Well, the product manufacturers, they don't owe you a fiduciary duty.
Do they owe a duty to advisors to ensure that advisors are staying within the law?
No.
Really?
Because advisors aren't vulnerable, unknowledgeable people.
Sure. Yep. I understand.
In principle.
In principle, yeah, I understand. Okay, so there's no responsibility from the product to the advisor.
Well, they've got legal responsibilities, right? They're not allowed to misrepresent.
Sure. Fraud, the basics for sure. But then from this fiduciary duty, is there ever been time in history before, say, FOFA even, where it was technically a no-go, but it was just common practice?
What do you mean by no-go?
Let's talk about receiving commissions before disclosure of those commissions, right? So in the early days, advisors were just earning commissions and it didn't need to be disclosed.
Yeah.
That was financial planning for many years. Yeah. So how did that even exist?
So they're new boys on the block, aren't they? Financial advisors.
Yes.
Historically speaking.
Yes.
Trustees have been around for ages.
Yep.
And lawyers have had their duties. So the society's changed and it's become more complex, and we didn't used to have financial markets, and then we had share markets. And of course, brokers aren't fiduciaries. So was there a time when this was unregulated by the common law? Yes.
Wow.
Because these things grew up over time through custom. The common law followed business practices. So then in the 1700s, you had fiduciary duties recognised, at least from then, and from trusts. So a matter of policy, you've got to have trustees who are above board, who aren't making a profit out of their role and not serving the vulnerable beneficiaries. So that was established. And then you had your solicitors were established under the same principle. And then financial advisors, whenever they started to hold themselves out as independent people who you could trust, and the suggestion was, or the outright offering was, that they would advise you independently and look out for your interests alone, and we don't have any relationship with the products that we're recommending, then they were fiduciaries.
Huh.
And that's been recognised in Australian law. Of course, I don't know, when was the first financial advisor? When did that grow up? I don't know. But as soon as you ticked a number of boxes where the person was vulnerable and they were clearly relying on you, and that person had taken on an independent role of saying, I'm going to advise you independently, then they were a fiduciary.
Yeah. So potentially there was a time where advisors were filling that role, but for whatever reason, the common law just didn't cover them somehow.
Well, they were covered, but you'd say a lot of it's not adequate, because what do you do if your fiduciary breaches the duties to you? What do you have to do?
I have no idea.
You've got to go to court, right?
Right.
And you've got to prove it.
Right.
So that's been a bit of a problem with the common law, in that you have to go to court. The aggrieved party has to go to court and prove everything. And if they don't prove any part of it, then they fail. So it's risky. Litigation was risky. Because it was a simpler time, and of course a lot of this worked by trust, and you didn't have to go to court. It was the threat of going to court was there.
Yes.
But then as things became more complex, mom and pops started to get into the deregulated financial markets. The markets were regulated, weren't they, until then? Consumers, Joe average, didn't go into the market. So it was only when they started going in, because this is a great thing that they can go into the markets. Then you had hard luck stories of people who have been ripped off, given bad advice. So there's calls for protection for this. And then we can't expect this person who's lost all their money to then have to prove that there was a breach and go through all that expense.
Yeah.
So then you had regulations come in, and the birth of ASIC and FOFA, and the 10 years before FOFA, the FSRA, where there was a requirement for disclosure. So you had to disclose everything.
Yes. So the burden's obviously insanely higher than that now. Now we have legislated ethics, which is a really, really interesting scenario, I think, from any profession's point of view, in any country's point of view. So
I don't know about that. Well, I don't know whether it's an insanely high standard.
I think legislation,
it's more detailed.
Well,
yes.
Well,
but if you think about it, we're really coming full circle back to the fiduciary principle,
and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, that's what we cover in our workshop. You see, why look at the end product of a complicated Corps Act when the Corps Act is trying to legislate some basic common law principles? Why don't you just learn the common law principles? Then you can read the Corps Act and understand what it's getting at.
Yes.
But the Corps Act was a rules-based approach, and globally we're moving from rules-based tick boxes approach into principles-based, right? So we're really going back to principles, if you like, because of common law principles. We've clarified certain areas. So what the Corps Act was very good about was that it said this is personal advice, it's for retail clients. So it was clear demarcation of when you're in the gun as a financial advisor. And when you have to act for a client's best interest, right, or versus a wholesale client. So that was very useful. But the principles are the same, common law principles. So just learn the common law principles. And it's really hard to say that there's really any particular area where the common law has been significantly exceeded in its level of care that's required.
So you're saying that which is pretty unique as far as I'm aware, having legislated ethics is probably more in line with our previous form of principle-based common law than the more modern style of tick box corpus act.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really interesting point of view. I definitely hadn't ever considered that.
Yeah. Some things have been clarified, but what's in the code of ethics, which doesn't have an historical basis at least, or even a strong historical parallel. That's what I would ask, and I don't really see too much.
It's in regards to the fascia board. So you have consumers people on there, you have ethics people on there, you have industry experts and financial planners. I could imagine that would be a difficult board to run and to get an outcome.
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion in terms of what you would like to see as a methodology for interacting with advisors and the fascia board? Do you feel like there could be an efficient and effective way to communicate? Obviously, Stephen said when he was on here, you can go onto the website, right? So you can go onto the website and there's a contact us form essentially, and you can submit via that. Do you feel like that is an efficient way for the advisor public and the board to operate?
What's the feedback been from people who have made submissions? I mean, I did make one submission on a couple of minor matters, but I didn't get the sense that people have been ignored. Stephen dealt with that in his speech at the FPA Congress, if you didn't hear that, and in the podcast. So.
Yes. Yeah, I found it to be a pretty reasonable character.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I wrote this article, 18 misconceptions, just if you can read that through. I mean, but I did try to be brief.
That's on LinkedIn, by the way.
It's on LinkedIn. There's a lot of misconceptions out there. And I think it's like, it's akin to engineers and who are building things in accordance with the laws of Newton, and
pretty strict laws. Those ones.
If you don't know what the laws of Newton are and how engineers operate, then so the word comes out, they're going to put a big tower in the middle of town, or they're going to put the structure over the river, and you say to yourself, that's never going to work. It's going to fall over, and death and destruction and everything's going to go wrong. And then you learn to trust. Well, engineers actually follow some established principles. That they actually, it'll be okay. Don't worry, it'll be okay. But you can't really satisfy people until the bridge is there and has been there for 10 years. So the common law and these principles were developed by genius jurists of the common law. They really suss these things out, and they've proved very robust, and they haven't been tampered with. So this fiduciary concept is one that's become very, very robust. So it's protecting the consumer, yes, but not at the expense of the advisor. There's a balance struck, and the payoff is trust.
Yes, which is what we're looking for.
That's what you're looking for.
One of the things I thought was really interesting in terms of the 18 misconceptions, right? I keep thinking there should definitely, what's that name of the film? It's like, the 8 things I hate about you or whatever like that, 10 things I hate about you.
It's always a round number, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So the 18 misconceptions. One of them was, or at least you sort of addressed this, where one of the big things, and it is a big thing, and I completely understand this, is that advisors are scared of being litigated against, and your article sort of goes to some extent to say lawyers like to be consistent.
Yeah.
And it was lawyers that helped write this, and so they haven't written it to open it up to liability. So can you sort of duck into that a little bit, because that's a key part of why advisors have been scared about it. It's a bit
like the engineers being constrained by Newton's laws.
Right.
So lawyers they're not taught to be creative. They're taught what the law is, the principles of it.
Yes.
And so it gets programmed into them. So they don't really depart from that. They clarify it, and they might fill in a gap.
Yes.
That because society's changed somewhat, so there's something needs to be elaborated on, but it's informed by the historic principle. There's not much new in law. It's very conservative, and lawyers are wanting to be consistent with that. So the code of ethics is consistent with the law. That committee did not sit down and come up with a whole lot of ethics out of the blue. I think it's written by lawyers. That code of ethics is written by lawyers. It's consistent with the common law. So relax.
Right. ASIC came out and have offered to fill in some gaps as in terms of it actually came out the day that I interviewed Stephen, where they said, for any shortfalls or misunderstandings, we're happy to sort of play a role in helping to explain some of this. Can you give any more context to that press release?
I thought they said that they would. So their territory is licensees.
Yes.
So wasn't it about licensees? They're saying, well, in terms of the licensees, we're going to support licensees in achieving these outcomes.
Yeah, correct. And
being a little through bit gentle. Their relevant providers. Yeah. So I think what they were saying is that the code of ethics is aimed at advisors. So to the extent, though, that those objectives need to be will need some licensees to cooperate with that, then we'll be in favour of supporting the licensees.
Sure.
That's what I thought.
Now, how are you with getting put on the spot in terms of direct questions that I know advisors are still asking? Because this so let me know if you have an opinion on this or not. This is still a question that's getting asked, and I know some licensees are agreeing and some are disagreeing. But one of the things that Steve and I discussed was referral fees, right? So if you send business to company B and you're company A, and if company B pays the advisor directly, it looked to be a conflict. But if the company B paid the referral fee to company A, and then the advisor as an employee earned an additional revenue due to other aspects, and there wasn't a direct line, then it was potentially fine.
It's not fine.
It's still not fine.
No, that's not fine, because the employee relevant provider is receiving conflicted remuneration because their remuneration, they're receiving a bonus or volume-based remuneration that's dependent on the referral to company A.
Right.
But as for that's consistent. That hasn't even changed really, because that's the conflicted remuneration ban.
Yeah.
Which Commissioner Hayne approved of in the report, in the Royal Commission report. So we should talk about that. The Commission report, the effects of that. But as for payments between company A and B, well, the Code of Ethics doesn't apply to that relationship.
Yeah, it only applies to the relevant provider, otherwise known as an advisor.
Yeah, but that could be still a conflicted remuneration under the Corps Act. It's just the Code of Ethics has only got scope as applying to advisors.
Yes.
So there's nothing really, there's no big loophole there as far as I can see.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because then, how deep does a JV relationship have to extend to be able to not be a referral fee, but rather a sharing of business?
Yeah. So this is the practicality thing. Like, everything's a conflict in some way, but we're all earning. Yeah. We all have to make a crust in some way. So you're drawing a reasonable line on what a client would feel is not on.
Sure.
In terms of backhanders that they don't know about.
Yeah, it's and I fully understand the purpose of it, right? I fully understand that you want to stop, advisors being able to do the classic sort of stick them all in SMSF, pump it full of the off the plan properties that the same. So I absolutely understand the concept of what it's trying to solve. That's the piece that no one disagrees with. It's the piece that your mate that shares a table in the office with you that you've worked for 20 years with, and he does a great job with your clients, and he gets mortgages for a really good price, and it's stuff like that that unfortunately just doesn't really cut the mustard, so to speak.
I'm not sure what you mean there.
So for example, let's say I was a financial planner, you're a mortgage broker, we share an office together, and for the last 20 years, you've got my clients really good mortgages and taken care of them and made me look fantastic as an advisor. And together we've looked after hundreds of advisors.
Yeah. But you're in a different business.
But we're in a different business. Yeah. I'm AB financial planning, you're CD mortgage broking.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's seen as a conflict. To me, that's just that.
Well,
I feel like that.
If the client's paying paying the fee, then that's excluded from conflicted remuneration. So it's only the secret commissions, the backhanders, that are being outlawed here. So your client gets referred to me as the mortgage broker. I do that, and by the way, his fee, Roger's fee is $100. So you charge that, and so that's not conflicted remuneration.
If it's declared,
if the client's paying it,
right? So if you declare to my client that I'm getting 20% of that money, then we're all above board.
Yeah, and on the invoice that goes to them,
on the invoice,
that's a line item which says what the payment that they're making to me in effect. It doesn't have to be strictly directly to me.
Yes,
as long as they're paying it.
I understand. And would that still be the case if it was a commission earned via the mortgage?
No.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
That's tough. So it's. I mean, that's. I guess they're those situations that I'm describing.
It's compromise. It's a compromise. I mean, let's take it back to your dentist example.
Yes.
You're in the dentist. He says you've got a problem here. I need to send you to a specialist.
Yes.
So refers you to the specialist, and it doesn't tell you that he's getting 5%.
Right.
Now that would be that wouldn't be on, would it?
Well, I don't doubt that it happens.
No, I don't know. They don't get anything.
They don't get anything.
No.
Okay.
No, they can't get that. That's unethical. So you want to know that the referral to that specialist is completely in your interests. I'm not tainted with this relationship here. I send people to someone who I don't actually think is very good, but I'm getting 5%. So.
Well, yeah.
So there's no specialists get a kickback like that. Doctors don't get a kickback for referring you to surgery, right? Lawyers don't get a kickback from the barrister. You refer you. These things are above board. So that's what you will bring it into that sphere.
I mean, myself personally, as an advisor, I didn't do any sharing of payment.
Right.
Yeah. And I know a lot of advisors that don't. It's still. I know.
I've got a lot of sympathy for it. I really, because I was advised many years ago. I started I wasn't saving any money, spending my money, and they said, "Why don't you go into this product and put in this much per month of your salary?" And I didn't ask what they were getting, but they didn't charge me anything. But I knew they were getting something, but I didn't really, wasn't really interested. I didn't mind.
Yeah.
That's just the way it went. But it's an easy example, isn't it? Where it's not really a problem, and I was happy to pay them out of my earnings because I guess I felt like I wasn't paying them anything because I never saw it. So it's one of these fallacies, thinking fallacies, right? Cognitive fallacies. So, but actually, it's not really fair, is it? That I was not being told. I've since been told you'd be amazed what they were getting. I didn't really know. But it got me saving.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So essentially, if you call them kickbacks, that has been the way that this industry has run, right, for so long, from a product to licensee level, to a licensee to an advisor level, to an advisor to other professions level. It's almost like it's how the business has been run. And even now, still to this day, there is insurance commissions, right? So an insurance advisor will still get a commission based on the insurance that they declare. Walk me through how an insurance commission is still allowed under this fiduciary duty.
Well, it was a carve out, wasn't it? And insurance salespeople were not fiduciaries. They were agents of the insurance company. So they weren't fiduciaries, they weren't financial advisors.
When was this decided?
Well, they weren't historically.
I can tell you right now
Yeah.
that insurance planners consider themselves financial advisors for sure. And
Well,
not
these
agents.
days, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, these days. But they pleaded to the FOFA inquiry. So they said we're an exception because we've always operated this way.
Yeah.
Right? So they got an exception, but the commissions have been regulated and equalised, right?
Yeah,
so they're all standard.
That's fair.
So that's taken out the temptation to recommend one product over another.
Yeah. It was a little bit crazy. I remember it's kind of interesting because I got into financial advice via tax accounting.
Uh-huh.
And so I was very used to meeting with people. They pay a fee. It's all, la-di-da. And then I went to Dixon Advisory, and back in the day, that was quite a good name. And sort of spent a year there, and I was in the SMSF sort of CIS team. So we only really dealt with the advice, didn't touch the investments and didn't touch insurance. And so it was all fee for service. And I remember learning about commissions. And I guess I was maybe like in my 5th year of working in finance in one way or another. And I remember it was kind of weird because I was like, okay, so rather than just charging a fee, you get someone to pay for something else and then they pay you. It was kind of coming at it from a long way around rather than getting brought up into it. It was a mindset that I had to get my head around to start doing rather than it being a natural and easy part. And so I definitely think the new advisors that are coming through that aren't exposed to commissions in any way, I don't think are really going to struggle with it. I think it's sort of normal. But with the insurance commission, I've always found it to be an interesting thing because I totally understand the counter argument, which is, well, who's going to pay for someone to do their insurances? And I'm sure there would be some level of people that were doing it, but it's such an unenjoyable topic and we talk about the fallacies before logical fallacies. This may not be a logical fallacy, but you could call it, for lack of a better term, I think an emotional
it's one of those cognitive fallacies.
Where people just don't want to.
Yeah, I think they call
it
the maths accounting fallacy,
right?
So people have an account that the college account sort of thing, or the holiday account, so they won't touch that. Meanwhile, they're racking up credit card debt. So it's irrational. It's highly irrational. But you don't want to touch that, and people would rather pay something and a cut comes out of that they don't really know about, rather than have to actually hand over the cash for a service. You can understand that, yeah. So, but the insurance objections are really based on when you say, well, who's going to pay for that? Well, they're paying for it anyway, right? So it's just a different way of paying for it, which Commissioner Hayne has said that he wants everyone to charge like that, because that's how everybody else gets charged in the world. We've kind of reached a consensus that you charge for your time and your skill, based on, if not time, then some kind of tangible reward.
Let's duck into that, because you mentioned before we should sort of bring it up. Yeah. So Commissioner Hayne, you've got the Royal Commission. What were your takeouts?
Yeah, well, the point I wanted to make on that, because there's a lot of takeouts, right? the point I wanted to make there is that so he what did he say when he reviewed all the terrain? What did he say? He said he finds conflicted remuneration ban it's okay. He thinks it's aimed at the right things. It's just all the exceptions he wants phased out. So the idea of payments not influencing your product recommendations one over the other, he thinks that's a good idea. So FASIA have read the Commission report, right? And they're saying, well, how do we preserve that? That's been approved. So hence in Standard 7 we have the accept as specified in the Corps Act. So that ban has been preserved. So Commissioner Haynes also said he doesn't like conflicts of interest. That's not working. The ban's not working. So what does Vassia do? They put in a conflict of interest prohibition, but at the same time they need to preserve the conflicted remuneration ban. And also, so the things that conflicted remuneration doesn't ban have to not be conflicts under the Code of Ethics.
What does that mean?
Well, that means that payments are okay if they're not conflicted remuneration.
Right.
So so what they've gone into, and just added to this though, so Commissioner Haynes said there's still a conflict, even even with the conflict of remuneration ban, there's still a conflict of interest, which hasn't been effectively prohibited, which is there's the temptation to recommend a change or a positive action rather than do nothing.
Yes.
Rather than stick with the course of action. So conflict of remuneration doesn't address that problem.
Yeah.
So what Vassia have had to do is they want to ban conflicts of interest, but preserve conflicted remuneration, and the things that aren't conflicted remuneration. So they've really they've already gone into, well, and this is, lawyers have done this. What is it that conflicted remuneration is really banning? And what it's banning is any sort of payment which creates a temptation that a disinterested outside observer would reasonably say is likely or could induce a breach of the best interest duty. So they've just rephrased this, and it looks complicated. And in their latest guidance, they've got a page and a half on that. And then they finished off with, and by the way, no recommendations which are clearly not reasonable compared to sticking with the existing course of action or doing nothing. So,
yeah, because obviously traditionally one of the problems has been if someone's in a low cost ETF, like a low cost, say, industry super fund, and they've got less than $100,000, and someone's recommending an SMSF or something like that. I wish they'd kind of like call out the more problematic scenarios, like what I just mentioned. So, if you're recommending, actually, I believe that there has been a minimum stuck or a clearer.
Well, they've got like 30 examples in their October guidance,
right?
As he's put in. So, if you write to them, they might put one in.
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point.
Well,
so,
what is that, Casey?
Well, yeah, I mean, just moving into self-managed super funds a little bit too aggressively. That's a clear one. Putting people into property that from an investment company that you or that the financial planning company has an association with or an ownership in, those kind of ones are the really easy
one
ones.
of the case studies in the Code of Ethics explanatory statement was an SMSF sort of train wreck.
Yeah,
you've read those.
Yes, that's why they're now saying sort of closer to 500,000, where traditionally it was around $200,000 to recommend an SMSF. I've seen 500,000 get mentioned quite a bit more recently. Right. So without sort of going into detail into the stuff that you talk about at your workshops, one of the things that I've paid attention to in terms of financial advisors, especially on the XY platform, is a lot of people love to get training, right? And I was actually talking about it with someone just at lunch. They said, do you think a lot of people are going to leave by the end of the year with the test? And I said, well, the test is, it's got a pretty high pass rate. And I'm sure if you do a little bit of training, there's an even higher chance that you'll get through. But say 2024 in regards to doing a degree, I think we'll definitely see a large, even in the XY community, which I think is 2/3, give or take. From what we can tell, probably around 2/3 of people have a degree, which is higher than the general advice population. But still, that's 1/3 of people that need to still get a degree, and we have no idea as to whether that's even an appropriate degree. So I think probably in the next couple of years we'll see I think that will have a bigger drop off. But do you think there should be advisors out there that are leaving because of the FASIA exam?
Well, not because of the FASIA exam, no.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think you can cram for it. You can do a course. And if what I've observed through our participants is that the older, more experienced advisors, they actually know this stuff. They do consider the broad long-term interests of their clients because
they've been living it. They've been living with the repercussions.
They've been living with the repercussions, and they have amazing relationships with their clients, and they I think we all agree that people who don't have the life experience, I mean, how do you do that? How do you ask someone what are you going to do? What do you want to do? Have you thought about what happens if you die? I don't know. These are really very confronting questions, and they're more experienced, older advisors. They've done it, so they kind of learned how to do it, if you like. So it's a tough job. It's a tough job, and I think you can parallel it again to other professionals where you got to learn at the foot of somebody else and learn the questions they ask and so on. What was the question again?
The degrees? First of all, do you think anyone should leave because of the exam, and then what do you think will happen with the...
Look, if you can't pass the exam by doing the reading, doing a course like ours, then you should be able to pass it. You should pass it. The feedback I've got is that the exam's actually not bad.
Yeah,
it's got a good correspondence with what it's supposed to be asking, so it's fair. That's what I heard. So, and the code of ethics isn't really it's hard to fault it really. Unfortunately, you have to learn all the disclosure stuff which came in 2001, and then you've got to learn FOFA because this is all still in place under the Corps Act, and you have to learn. So that's made it a bit more difficult. But there's a lot of regulation, but you can learn it. Yeah. As for degrees, I don't know. I don't know why. This might be a bit controversial, but no one's been able to explain to me why you have to do an ethics course in addition to this FASIA exam. I don't know why you have to do that. Lawyers don't have to study ethics.
Yeah,
they do an exam, but they're not studying the theory of ethics. The deontological theory versus utilitarian.
Yeah.
Why do we have to do that? In fact, it's actually all in the common law. So I don't understand that, but maybe someone will explain it to me.
Where do you see advice in, let's say, 5 years from now?
I think it'll be I think everyone will be passing through, and there'll be increasing levels of trust. I do, and I think people will be marketing themselves with confidence and providing value, and you'll be doing well. That's what I think. Yeah. Because there's, as far as I'm aware, there's all super funds coming available, money coming available. No one else can advise you. It's legal, right? It's not like you have competition. You don't. It's closed shop. If you're advising, giving financial advice, then you have to do this, and no one else can do it. So people do need financial advice. If I won the lottery, I'd go to a financial advisor if my wife wasn't a financial advisor.
Is your wife a financial planner?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Please tell me she passed the...
She passed, yeah. She said pass. So she's my... we co-present the workshop. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, so she brings that perspective and I bring the ethics law perspective.
Well, to wrap up our conversation, tell us about what you got going on.
We run a day-long workshop.
Yep.
Covering all the FASIA curriculum, including practice questions from the FASIA exam, and we equip people to pass the exam. Yeah.
Awesome. What's the website?
bluepath.com.au, and it's all there. You can register on there. We run workshops in the major centres in the weeks leading up to each exam wave.
Well, like I said, I heard really good things before I ever had the chance to meet you, and then read about what you were doing online, and then seeing the the selfies. So, mate, congratulations on the impact that you've already had on the industry. And let's stay in touch.
Thanks, Clayton. Thanks very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.